car. I sent her the link, but I'm not sure whether she's going to join us or not.
All right. Okay. Well, we're talking about socialization today. So if
I
you, hmm?
yes, yes.
All right. All right. So we can get started. We can socialize, as it were. Let's start with the first question, which is what is your definition of socialization? And then let's start with you. What is socialization?
I think socialization it is possibility to communicate in the society.
Okay. All right. And Denise, what would you say? What is socialization?
Mm, for me, socialization is a skills to interact with society in effective way.
Okay. All right. So similar. I don't know. When I hear the word socialization, I have a bit of a different sort of definition, I would suppose. But mine is more like conforming to the expectations of how to behave within a society. Right? Okay. So I think they're all kind of similar, but mine is maybe a bit more negative in that sense. Let's get to our next question, which is why do you think that society puts so much importance on socialization? Denise, why do you think?
Mm. Uh, you uh, talk about very interesting point because yes, socialization is has two sides probably, and on one side it's about mostly an interaction, and on the other side is to be good part of something, good part of society, to be conformed with society. So from your point of people as some social institute, it's very important to be an effective part of such structure, like be a good citizen or to be a good people in school or something like this. So from some hierarchy, social hierarchy viewpoint, such kind of socialization is a most important part of building of hierarchy and organizing of people. On the other side, in a more abstract definition of socialization, it's really hard sometimes to discuss something or to do some work with people without good social skills. Because if some person switch to emotions in situation where some technical decision is necessary, it's hard to deliver any good result of such discussion or such decisions. So ability to communicate well, to interact well, it's very important also.
Okay. All right. Ella, what about you? Why do you think that society puts so much importance on socialization?
I think because it is important for the society itself, because people are very different and they used to communicate in different way. Their tempers are different, their habits are different. Some people are very active and some of them are aggressive. So that's why there are some rules of successful communication, and that's why I think it is so important thing discussing all the time in the society, and every member of the society wants to be successful, and uh, mm, but uh, The point is that it is sometimes not very easy to be successful without touching interests of the other members of the society. So this is sometimes it is difficult to come to a best decision. So that's why I think it is an important thing.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, all right, well, of course, society needs people that function within it, right? So this is definitely something that is important. You can't have people that aren't functional within a society. But then at the same time, you also need people that follow the rules that are set by society, that are able, of course, to communicate with others, to work alongside others, to make sure that everything, is functional. Again, these are the sort of key words that we're coming back to time and time again. But then I don't know. I think that when we get into a deeper understanding of this whole socialization, I think that we all have seen that there are certainly people who are more active members of society proper, and there are also is also a substantial amount of people who are kind of outside of that greater social structure, if that makes sense. People who kind of do their own thing. And those are sometimes the people who are successful in life. Those are sometimes the people who aren't successful in life. There are a lot of different variables that um, we see in the world. We see a set of guidelines as to how we are supposed to behave, how we are supposed to interact with others, what our functions are. But at the same time, we see people who don't fall into that socialization structure. Maybe they are, future inventors or innovators. Maybe they're future criminals. There are all these different things that are outside of that norm, but there are also things that definitely help us both grow as a society and maybe also fall back depending on what spectrum you're on. Next question is, do you feel that you are socialized? Denise, do you feel that you are socialized? Whatever that means.
Somehow, I think when I start with school, I meet many guys from slightly different social groups and with other experience of social communications. So on that period, I think I feel myself not well socialized. But when I start studying on university and after I start working with uh, people with similar perception as me, I start feeling myself more socialized. So it depends on people's which you communicate with, your environment, and so on. So common answer is yes, I feel myself socialized enough. But it depends on goals, on situation, and it's a complicated question.
Okay. All right. It's fair enough. Elia, what about you? Are you socialized?
Yes, I think I'm a quite socialized person, and I was socialized at school and at the university, but during my teenage periods, I had some problems with my friends in understanding each other. But all in all, in general, yes, I'm quite socialized. Although my husband says that I'm not so socialized as I think it about myself. Because, for example, I don't have one best friend who came from the childhood, but I explain it with my moving to another country. Maybe that was the reason. why I don't have that the true friend. So I don't know, but all in all, I think I'm quite socialized. I'm a quite socialized person.
Okay. All right. I don't know. Like, again, this is, for me, it's a tricky question because I am a social person in that I, enjoy spending time with other people and I have my friends and, it's all kind of fine in that respect. But when it comes to being that sort of blending in with everything else, sort of, average person in a society, I don't think I've ever really fit into that mold. And it's not really something that I care about. Does that make any sense? I mean, I think that the older I get, the more I see why there are these notions of socialization and why, people are supposed to behave a certain way and be content with things as they are. And I'm just not the type of person who is just 100% okay with whatever the situation is, because I'm the type of person who maybe has higher expectations from other people, from government, from, you name it. I don't want to say that I'm going to just pick out problems, but I'm aware of problems and I want to push to make things better. And this is probably the result of, I mean, we'll go talk about this more too, about how we're raised and what we're exposed to as children, and what sort of environment we are in as children. If you are a child that's 3 years old and you are in a kindergarten nursery environment all day and you kind of have to follow whatever you're being told to do and there's no room for dissent or dispute, you're kind of going to be conditioned to not make problems if there's something that's not okay. Whereas if you're in an environment where your needs and wants and, concerns are valid and are validated on a regular basis, you're more likely to be the type of person who pushes those limits. So we'll talk more about that in a bit, but it's just the sort of way that I'm, analyzing the situation, kind of look a bit. Do you think that socialization is really just confirmation? I mean, I think that it is. This is, again, my personal opinion. And this is my personal opinion that is based upon living in several different societies and observing different sectors of societies. So I see how the average people are. I see how the below average are, and I see how the above average are. And we can look at that in terms of social class. We can look at that in terms of financial, monetary status. We can look at that in terms of intelligence. We can look at these in a lot of different ways. My personal opinion on this is that socialization is confirmation. We can talk about that a little bit more. But what do you think, Denise? Do you think that socialization is confirmation?
It depends on definition. Sometimes I also define socialization as a confirmation mostly. But when I start thinking about how how development works on a team level, how people can communicate for improve its work result, I find a slightly different effect. It's not confirmation. It's more about having goals to present opinion and to understand other opinion. And it's hard to describe only as confirmation. But it's useful to call such aspect as socialization too. So usually I split socialization as an effective way to interact, and socialization is confirmation. And on the other side, I'm not sure I understand confirmation in the right way, probably, because there are Russian words.
To conform, to fit,
Yes.
to not, to be inside of the box, right? If the whole idea of Apple and that sort of thing is thinking outside of the box, being different or something like that, this is being inside the box. That's basically what this confirmation is. It's to be inside the box and not outside of the box, if that makes sense.
Yes, but on that viewpoint, as a be inside the box or be inside of society, be a representative, a good part of society. There is some societies where low communication and low interaction skills is a right thing. So on such way, some people can be conformed to society, but has low communication and interaction skills. So I'm not sure that confirmation works for all aspect of socialization.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Elia, what about you? What do you think? Do you think that socialization is really just confirmation? Being inside that box?
I think it depends on the activity, on job you are doing in the society, because there are some jobs where you don't need to communicate so much with other people, and the level of your communication doesn't influence the your career in the whole. But there are other kinds of occupations where this very socialization is very important. For example, if you're a top manager, I think it's the most important skill to mm, make good career development. So I think it depends. Or another, if you are, for example, artist, you don't need to be socialized. You just need to be sensitive and to make brilliant things of art. So, and your level of socialization is not so important. Otherwise, of course, if you want to popularize yourself, to be involved in this PR, so you should be a charismatic one, and to like to be involved in these socialization processes.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair enough. Fair enough. That is true. I mean, if you want to be a part, if you want to, uh, yeah, those are all important things. All right, let's get into a little bit of a different direction here. How important do you think it is for children to go to childcare from a young age? Elia, as a mother, as an educator, what do you think? What do you think?
I think it also depends on the child. So I would like to share with my own experience. I missed that kindergarten period because I had my a very nice, great, kind grandmother. She thought, "Oh, poor little girl, I don't want to give her to kindergarten." So the family decision
Give her
was
away. Give her away. Grandma didn't want to give you away.
yes. So the family decision was to make me stay at home, and so I missed that period. And at school, I hadn't difficulties because I had enough level of knowledge. Maybe that helped me to be socialized among the class members. But I think in general, this kindergarten period is very important. But mothers, fathers, parents should be very attentive, because I had not very good experience with my son, because I pushed him to the kindergarten, to the group where children were 1 year older than him, and I think they um, they pressed him, and this pressure was supported by the not teacher. Who is it in the kindergarten? um,
You could say, I mean, yeah, you can still call them teachers. In English, you would still call them teachers, even though they're not really teachers. They're,
So this
yeah,
current teacher, she supported that pushing, and I think he was really stressed. His best day was this ending parting of kindergarten, and he was so lucky to go out from that kindergarten and go to school. And really, in school nowadays, he is much more successful. But sometimes he has some problems with communications because he is afraid, really afraid of that pushing, of that what is it, bullying? Yes, is it
bullying. Yes,
bullying?
bullying. Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So I think this communication with among children is very important, but parents should be very attentive in this case, I think.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Denise, what about you? How important do you think it is for children to go to childcare from a young age?
I have similar story with Elia. My parents tried to send me to childcare. I reject it, and before school, most time I lived with my grandma. So I have no massive childcare experience to my mind, but also later I understand that uh, due to missing childcare, in a young age I had a bad experience with communicating in a big child group, because where I live there was only three maximum, and some five children of my age. So it was a rather small company. And when I start going to school, I feel that my experience is not so good. So, but on the other side, as I know, in most kindergarten, uh, it's not effective way to deliver any skills, good skills, or any knowledge to children, because a big group, one nurse, it's not a good thing. So uh, when I will have a child, I think probably I'll try to send him to a modern way kindergarten with a small group with a bigger amount of teachers for a child. But it depends on our personal abilities, personal feelings.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm kind of like you guys too, because I also had my grandparents. They were, primary. Well, when my parents were working, my grandparents would take care of us. It was just as simple as that. And eventually, I ended up going to a preschool, which is what you call it in America. And it was only for, I think, 3 or 4 hours a day, 2 or 3 days a week. So it wasn't the same sort of situation as you have with like this детский сад, which is, the full day sort of childcare. Of course, they're different programs, but it's a different approach. And this is something that's interesting because what you have in Russia, what you have in most of Europe are those full day programs where basically children are there while their parents are working. It's as simple as that. And what they had in the US was a bit different because you have to remember that for many, many years in America, women were really not working. If you had the social need or the economic need or even ability, let's put it that way, in Europe or in Soviet Union or in socialist countries where women were working, children had to be somewhere, right? And if you didn't have grandma, or if grandma was still working, you know, like this is not sort of going to happen. So you have these state-run kindergartens that are there to take care of children, whereas in the US, which you had, is you have, of course, you know, pedagogical experts and educators and all of these child development specialists. And you had the research that was being done that when children were being, and I don't want to say socialized, but when children were going to preschool, which meant that they were being exposed to early ABCs or numbers or things like that, these children were then doing better in school. So what happened in around the 1980s in America was there was this real interest in putting your child in preschool, because if your child goes to preschool, he or she will do better in school. So of course, any, you know, successful American family in the 80s wanted their children to go to preschool, whether or not mom was working or not, whether or not it was, you know, like, it wasn't necessarily the case. It was just something that was done. So I went to this, you know, 2-3 days a week for a couple hours a day. And I can tell you honestly that I learned more at home with my grandparents than I did at this preschool. And my best memories are not from the preschool, they are from being with my grandparents. So learning how to read, learning how to write, learning how to type. Can you imagine that? I learned how to type when I was, I think, 4 years old. I could type better than I could write, you know. These are all things that were from home. So I don't know, when I hear about how, you know, as a parent, how, oh, a child has to go to the, you know, the kindergarten, has to go, it's the best thing. I am very, very skeptical based upon my personal experience, and based also upon based upon what I witnessed, because we have tried this several times, and what I have physically seen, like you were talking about, Elia, this bullying and everything else, I have seen this, and I see how a child who is otherwise very social, very friendly, easy to make friends, and can get along with different age groups, when you're put in a situation when there isn't appropriate adult supervision, which is what you were talking about, Denise, you know, when you've got one woman, you know, or two women who are responsible for 30 children, that's going to be chaos. You know, I'm very skeptical of the efficiency of that. Right now, where we're living, of all things, which is, I mean, a horrible situation, our window overlooks a kindergarten. So we can see the children that are playing, you know, and you can see the women who are just talking to each other. You can see kids hit and push each other. You can see bullying. You can see injuries. You can see all these things, and there's nothing you can do about it because that's just socialization. So I'm very skeptical of the effectiveness of that. I think that we're all different people. We all have different ways of being, that we are raised, and we all have different, well, we'll all have different lives, right? So you can't really expect that one size fits all. I think that's my kind of conclusion in that respect. But what do you think? I think, Ellie, let's get back to this. What do you think that adults can do to help children who are struggling to make friends? Should they do anything? What do you think, Elia? Role of
Uh,
adults.
yes, of course. First of all, we should speak to our children, and it is really very important. Unfortunately, in modern life, usually we don't have enough time for that. We miss that possibility to speak to our children, and many times I also mentioned that situation in my own family. Where, for example, just 3 days ago, we came from school, and I even didn't mention that my boy was pushed a little bit under his eyes, so there was some injury, but it was so little that I haven't mentioned that. But then after 5 minutes came our granny and said, "Oh, what's that? uh, what is it about? how was it? Tell me, please. So I think these questions are very important, and I also think that it is very useful routine just to speak before sleeping, just a little bit about the whole day, to ask about the friends, to ask about whole situation, and it's not very easy as it could seem for from the first glance. Sometimes it is difficult to make children to speak honestly because they're often very scared. I don't know why, but they've got fear to tell you all the truth because oh, I don't know because of what, because they don't they want to be strong, they want to solve all the problems themselves, they have fear not to be understand it, I think, understood, sorry. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, that's fair enough. Denise, what about you? What role do you think adults should have with helping children struggling to make friends?
I have no children yet, so uh, I have no practical experience. But when I help with organizing of children's camp, I don't know how to describe it in proper way in English. Uh, we also meet some amount of children with not so good social skills and which has a problem to find friends, to uh, organize communication in an effective way. But on my experience, trying to discuss such thing earlier than 16 probably is not a really effective way. A better way, to my mind, only to my mind, better way is to deliver a good example on your side, show example of communication, of solving problems, of organizing other people's. And also a good way is to prepare a very comfortable and mm, good environment where with not so big amount of people, where children can feel safe. And it's more simple to obtain some social skills or find friends where you communicate in a small group, not in a big group. So to my mind, it's a two most important things: example and preparing of some simplified and safe environment to communicate. To communicate.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I don't know. I think that it's really important to guide children. I think that's the reason why children have parents, you know. This is the reason why uh, children aren't ready to, I don't know, I don't want to say to live their lives independently from a young age. I mean, why is it that children are growing for how many years? You know, they're growing not only physically, they're growing inside, they're learning things from us. And it's part of our responsibility as adults, as human beings, to, you know, help children to understand how life works. And I think part of that is helping them to understand how to make friends. And making friends is not something that is so, I don't want to say easy, but it's not so clear cut. You know, it's not, because there are lots of different people in this world. There are lots of different people with different interests, with different motives, with different goals. You know, there are like lots of different things that are out there. And the older you get, the more you're able to understand people, right? But children are still very, generally very trusting, and it's, you know, the older they get, the many times it's the more cautious they're going to be. I know that when I was a really small child, I was very open, and then once I started school, I was very closed. I was very cautious, and it took me a long time to grow back and to, you know, better evaluate people. But I think that, adults really do need to guide children. And for me, I mean, it's just a total disaster, whether it be on a playground or at a school or at a kindergarten or what have you, when you see how children are just running wild and you see, bullying, you see fighting, you see all different kinds of things that are happening. You see sometimes children that are just all by themselves. I was one time walking by a school and I saw a little girl that I knew who I had taught, maybe a year before. And I know that she had always kind of struggled socially. And part of what I did in the class I was teaching is we always were very inclusive, Yes, we understood, and the other children understood too, that she struggled with this. And they were really nice children, and they really tried very much to help and to make her feel more comfortable. And that was something they did because I think they knew that it was, one thing, they were very nice children, but two, they understood that the adult in charge, me, expected that it wasn't we're just going to leave someone behind. No, we're all here together. We have a common goal. We're here to work together. So, that being said, I know that it was possible when she had the right guidance and the right support. But what I saw was that she was on a playground at school. They had their recess break, and she was just completely by herself. She was the only child playing by herself. All the other children were together and everything else. And I just thought, well, I know it's possible for her to play with other children. I know it's possible for her to be friends with other children, but she needs help. And to me, it was just a really difficult situation to watch, knowing that here you had no real adult supervision or interaction or influence. And is that their job? I don't know. You tell me. There are a lot of things that aren't necessarily our job, but still, as people, we do out of, the goodness of our hearts. And maybe it's the people who do that are able to bring these children who are struggling to make friends the skills they need to make friends, or at least the understanding that, it's something that they should expect. So I don't know. It is what it is. It is what it is. All right. Do you think that this is continuing? Do you think that adults should be involved in conflict resolution among children? I mean, if you see bullying, or if you see fighting, or if you something like that happening, should adults be involved? And up until what age should they be involved? What do you think, Denise?
Yes, because children usually, if children have no experience in a good way conflict resolution, they use instinctive way, and it's not a good way to obtain some effective and future experience of resolving the conflicts. So on such a point, of course, adults should involve in conflict, should control how conflict resolution, trying to moderate it. But on the other side, very strong way to prevent conflicts. It's a worst option too, because it's prevent child from getting experience of resolving conflicts, of being in conflicts. Because in some cases, conflict is a good way to find a problem, to highlight it, and to start finding a way to solve a problem without any experience and understanding how conflicts appears, how conflicts work, how people's behave in conflicts. Children have no ability to resolve it in future. So on the other side, in some cases, adults should be involved in conflict, should moderate it, but not so strong to allow child to find a way sometimes itself. It's some kind of guiding or correcting.
Okay. Yeah. Elia, what about you? What do you think? Should adults be involved? Should they be helping to, help resolve these conflicts? What do you think?
I quite agree with Denise because I think that adults should help and should be involved in what is happening around, but they um, they should also let go the things as they go, because sometimes because really it is not your life but your children's life. So I think we should just help them, teach them to solve these difficult situations, but not to uh, s- um try not to solve this situation ourselves, but try to teach an appropriate way how to solve these difficult situations themselves. I think it is much more difficult, but it can be really helpful, and I think it will be much more useful for the kids themselves, especially in future.
Yeah, yeah. I think personally that it absolutely has to be there. Getting back to what I was saying before, that this is why adults exist. You know, this is why children aren't living on their own independently. You wouldn't expect, you know, a child to be able to cook his dinner by himself, you know, when he's 3 years old. But yet sometimes you see parents who think it's completely normal to leave the child at the playground and to get into fights with other children, which I have witnessed unbelievable things in many different parts of the world. And again, you know, people have different levels of involvement. People have different understandings of what it means to be, I don't know, like helping children with things and what have you. And I've got a watch that's battery just died. I'm sorry about that, you guys. Just making sounds. But it's one of those things, you know, that I don't see how it's possible to just sit around and watch a problem or watch children fight and not say, hey, stop. You know, I mean, it's as simple as that. Or to see a child hit another child or throw a rock at another child and just ignore it. Like, to me, that's completely beyond comprehension. Again, this is how I was raised. My sister and I fought all the time because that's a kind of natural thing for children to do. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. I mean, you know, children, they do. They argue, they fight. It happens. But at the same time, you know, I grew up always being told, stop fighting, don't do that. You don't treat other people like that. This isn't the way we behave. And even though and there's a big difference if you know something is wrong and you do it, versus if you do something and you don't know it's wrong. You know, I mean, and that's the sort of thing that I think we get to with this sort of thing. And like I say, I mean, I can't, if I see something bad happen, I can't just be quiet. And there's the age old adage, it takes a village to raise a child, right? This is something that was made very popular in the US in the 90s when Hillary Clinton actually said it, right? It takes a village to raise a child, and it's based upon this African proverb. But basically, I mean, it's saying that if the parent isn't there, but another adult is, it's therefore the responsibility of the other adult to step in and do something. And to me, that makes complete sense because in the long run, we're all part of this same social system. We're all going to be living together. We're all going to be working together. You know, and I think that parents in particular, are the most important parties in, you know, helping children to learn conflict resolution skills. Because if you're not telling a child um, to use his words or to, you know, better understand the situation, you're going to get a rock in someone's head, and that's just going to be, you know, who knows if it's a rock today, what is it going to be tomorrow, right? I think that's a very, very, I don't know. Like, we hear so much, for example, getting off on a completely different tangent, we hear so much about how we need, for example, in America, we need gun control, how guns are killing people. which is absolutely true. But, you know, there was, I think, something on the internet I saw one time. It's like, okay, if you take the gun away, what's going to happen? The kid's going to take a stick, you know, or the person's going to take a stick. So that's the thing. I mean, if you don't teach someone conflict resolution skills, it doesn't matter the means that they have. I mean, they can have any sort of weapon, or you can use anything as a weapon, right? But if you don't understand that there are other ways to solve your problems, there is going to be conflict. So again, I think that it's important to teach and to remember those skills. But how do we remember something if we're not taught them to begin with? All right, I'm talking a lot here, you guys. What do you think is the biggest challenge for teachers in overseeing the socialization of children? And I'm going to ask you this because you are, of course, a teacher. What is the biggest challenge for teachers?
I think I just now I quite agree with Denise about personal example is the best way of um, showing children how to behave. And I think, but talking also, if we combine these two things, talking and giving personal example, I think we can get the best results. Because, for example, if you're talking that it is very good to be not conflicting, not pushing, not bullying, but begin your personal lesson with that very pushing and bullying. So there's no use of such talks. And if you behave in a proper way, and you always try to talk about that, but in very friendly way, I think it would certainly it would give its results. But you should one should understand that usually it takes lots of time and lots of patience.
Okay, lots of time, lots of patience, definitely. Going a little above and beyond the expectation in that sense. Denise, what about you? What do you think is the biggest challenge for teachers?
I join with all things described by Elia. I only can add one point. In my mind, it's a rather tricky thing to teach. It's about compensation of a difference of environment of parents, because all children reproduce its parent behavior, and it's hard sometimes to solve some problem or to drive children in the right way without working or changing something the in his parents' behavior or perception. So
Yeah,
most tricky thing is
definitely. Yeah.
to compensate such differences.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that you would take into consideration too, parents and what those parents are like, and, you know, what they care about or what they don't care about, because you can teach someone, you know, forever something, and it's not like, you know, it's like you're trying to, you're pushing up against a brick wall, right? Or just because it's the same sort of thing. But yeah, you're definitely right. I think too that the situation teachers have is that, you know, you're outnumbered, right? You've got one teacher and you've got how many children in a class, and how do you, you know, how do you cater to every child? You really can't. It's not like you can give them the sort of attention that they need or something like that. What do you think is the biggest challenge that parents face in teaching their children how to socialize? Denise, what do you think?
To keep balance between guiding and providing of freedom to choose its own way, because usually parents, in all cases, parents have more experience in communicating in social behavior, and it's hard to avoid guiding children to reproduce this experience in a direct way. I usually meet situation where some people have somewhere that other call socialization, but it's not its own socialization. It works only for some cases. It's a direct copying of parents, for example, socialization. So to keep balance between providing ability to find his own way to get own experience and helps to avoid some really hard situations, some conflicts or some bad thing.
Okay. Elia, what about you? What do you think is the biggest challenge for parents?
Yes, I quite agree with Denise. I also agree that it is really very difficult um, to let it go as it go. Just because you know for example, especially when you know the situation and you know the right answer, but this it is really very difficult to not to press and not to bull, not to involve, not to be involved in the situation, not to um, start solving that very problems, just to be patient. It is sometimes very difficult. But other thing about what we should uh, mention, I think it is very important to have friendly relations with our children, because we parents, we are also, yes, we are more experienced, maybe in some cases more cleverer, but not every situation is familiar to us too. So I think the children should understand that we are also people and we can make mistakes, and our we should be friendly and loyal to each other, I think. And it is important to get the best results together, to speak about that and try to find the best resolution together. Sometimes we can pretend that we don't know the right answer and try to do it together. But I think in many cases it can be not pretending. It can be real situations that we are not sure of right or wrong answer, and we explore this world together. I think it is exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. I look at this sort of thing and I think about, oh, we're in a very interesting position, and we're in a very, it's a very important position to be guiding in this sort of thing. And I think that when it comes to challenges that are being faced, I think the biggest challenge that parents face is really the biggest challenge too that the children themselves faced, is that, you don't know how other children are being raised, right? You don't know, like you were talking about, Denise, you don't know what their backgrounds are. Their children are reflections of their parents, right? So if you've got children that are being taught to hit and kick and stand up for themselves or something like that, then you're going to have kids that are probably going to be aggressive towards other children, even if there's not a reason to be, just because they've been told, to not be walked on top of or something like that. And I think that this is the biggest challenge that I've seen. It's that you can teach your child to do the right thing, and that's not going to stop him or her from getting hurt by someone who hasn't been taught that, right? It's not going to, and I think that that's what makes it hard, is that, you can tell your child to do the right thing, and if he or she gets in trouble for doing the right thing, it's a very difficult thing to try to explain, right? So if I've done everything right, why do I still not have friends? If I've done everything right, why is it that I got in trouble? I didn't hit that kid hit me. but then the kid started crying and lied and said that I hit him. Those are the sort of things to me that are huge challenges, because it is a reflection. It's a reflection of how ineffective our society is, how unfair our society is. And this is, of course, very true. I mean, it is very true. Society is unfair. Society is filled with all different kinds of situations that are very difficult to deal with, and that just make you kind of roll your eyes and say, what the, and then insert your expletive here, and it's hard. It's hard for a child to understand that, and it's hard as an adult to understand that. Some people are able to just kind of accept it easier than others are. But for me, it's very hard to accept that, any age. The older I get, the more difficult it is for me to accept things as just being okay. So I don't know. Again, this is all a very personal thing, but I think we also have to understand and realize that we are individuals, that as much as socialization, confirmation, whatever you want to call it, is something that we have to more, in one way or another adhere to, we also are all different. We do have individual needs and, like, I don't know, not just needs, but understanding and processing of situations. All right, we got time for one more question. And what do you think is the best approach for future ways of human interaction and socialization? Denise, what do you think? What do you think is the best for the future? Are you there? You're mute.
I'm here.
Denise?
Yes.
Yeah? Denise, what do you think? What's the best approach for the future?
So hard questions. I think first it's to my feeling now society become more tolerant, and it's slightly make border of a different way of communication and interaction wider. So in such way, it's become simpler to socialize. And other from science side in psychology, there are many new ways to understand and to describe mechanism of interaction, how we perceive and understand others. So, and appear some different methods and ideas how to understand, how to prepare yourself to interact, to communicate, to understand well. But I can say that it's some defined approach. It's more like a trend.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Alia? What do you think? What do you think is the best future here for this?
I also very optimistic about the future. I think that in future our society will be more harmonized, harmonized. Much more harmony there will be in our society, I think, in future, because I think because it is the direction mm, that we are keeping nowadays in our civilization. Because if to compare nowadays with the medieval days, I think today socialization is much more easier than it was, I don't know, 500 years ago. And I think that in future it will be um, there will be much more kindness and understanding in the whole world. I don't know why, but I have such a feeling.
Okay, yeah, no, that's definitely something. I don't know this whole sort of future best approach. What's the best way? I think that definitely just being aware of the fact that people have feelings, you know, that people see things differently, that people matter. I think that this is something that we have the ability to understand more than we ever really did before with the advent of things like social media where people can share this. And I think that as people share more about what they experience and what they live, you know, we're going to see just people understanding that there are different types of people, that there are different needs or different interests out there. So that's pretty much it, I guess, you guys. This is a very interesting topic. We had a lot to talk about today. Any ideas for next time?
I have, but I'm not sure that it will be interesting for all. But I suggest so we can discuss some freaky topic as conspiracy theories, like flat Earth or Americans wasn't visit moon or something like this, because due to involving most people in communication throughout internet, some people with rather freaky viewpoint on common thing can create its own society and being only in that society, and really live in a world where some strange thing is become a fact. So to my mind, it's very interesting feature of
that
modern
sounds
world.
good. That sounds good. Conspiracy theories. I like that. What do you think, Elia?
Yes, I agree. I think it's very interesting.
Okay, so we will talk about conspiracy theories next time. That sounds good. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining for this nice conversation club today. See you again next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Thank
See you
you.
next
Bye.
time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.